And we're continuing Frank Camp series. I'm going to speak with Bryan Garner, Nick Powills. Going to talk about scalable franchise systems. And so operations manual comes into play, but at a deeper level, what's the difference between brands that scale and grow versus the ones that maybe sell franchises, but they don't build long-term value? They don't have the longevity. Guys, I'm excited about Frank Camp coming up in June. For everyone with us, if you haven't signed up for Frank Camp, definitely be there. Bryan Garner will be there. Your friend Nick Powills will be there. And then today, Bryan, for our Frank Camp community, for everyone joining us, scalable growth. Everyone's going through their FDDs right now, reissuing FDDs, refocusing on their franchise sales, but at an operational level, the whole operating system for instructing franchisees, improving their unit economics, maintaining system stability, and even legal stability. What's some foundational things we should be talking about today?
Well, one of the first questions, so everybody just went through FDD renewal season. Did they also review their ops manual and their learning management systems to see whether or not all of the improvements they made over the past year have been incorporated? My experience tells me no on that. A lot of people set it and forget it, and then they never give themselves credit in the persistent documentation for the growth, the changes, the improvements to unit economics, to construction, to the other things. So one thing is just attention.
What's the last movie you saw, Bryan?
I just saw Project Hail Mary.
Okay. Everybody's talking about that movie. Did you read the script?
I did not.
And the point that I'm making on that is I think that's the biggest disconnect between what a franchisee does in the beginning stages and what a franchisor does later on. So I would argue there's probably a beautiful script behind that movie, right? Like it's too good of a movie, right?
Probably.
So behind every operations that is actually performing and driving unit level economics, there's a great script behind it, which ends up being the ops manual. But when you're making or producing a great movie, the finished product is, and if we relate it back to franchising, the finished product for a franchise is when they exit the business. You built something, you scaled it, you exited, you're proud of what you created. Along the way of creating a movie, that script changes and adapts based on what the director is seeing. And so I think, like, as much as we've valued the FDD, and I don't think it's wrong to not, I think we have to value the FDD. I don't think the industry values the ops manual.
Nope.
They value the production of it that ends up happening through operations, but they don't value the script. And if this script never changes, and the only thing that changes the business construct of the FDD, and brands are like, well, why is this not working? Or why do I have gaps in expectation setting? It's all back to that script. So I'm making that point because I think if we did Frank Camp before where we took the movie, saw how a movie gets produced, we didn't unpack the ops manual. And the ops manual ends up being like the ugly stepchild that just sits on the side. It's just not a part of the business when it should be the movie script of how the business actually gets to, tremendous exit.
Yes and no. So you give me a perfect opportunity to talk about what an ops manual is and is not. 600-page gorillas are gone, and they don't make any sense anyway. The audience for an ops manual is the franchisor or franchisee. What do we expect from you? What are the standards? Those are SOPs. These are the policies. These are the general procedures. These are what has to happen on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. We don't teach people how to make a sandwich in the ops manual, nor should we. We shouldn't teach them how to make the widgets in an ops manual. That's MOP. That's a method of procedure. We're in a day and age now where we've got platforms showing a recipe build by video is far better than writing that down in an ops manual. And it's also to an audience that can access it. The people who make sandwiches are never going to read the ops manual because it also talks about things like brand standards and when you're paying royalties and all that other stuff. So today's operations manuals are the procedures, the way to provision the requirements from the FDD. So the FDD says that you have to use this particular POS. In the ops manual, we're going to say where you buy the POS, how it's paid for, whether you've got your own account or it's part of a larger account, what the requirements are, the reporting requirements, whether or not we can pull from you. But the actual using the POS is in a separate manual, and we go to that. So an operations manual in larger groups, and I'm talking 500, 1,000 unit systems, points to, and now I'm going to get back to your script, points to the ad-libbing. So the script doesn't really change. It's still the storyline. It's still the hero who suffers a disappointment, who rises to the occasion and eventually overcomes. That's still the ops manual. The actors ad-lib a little bit. They make some changes on site. All of that happens. Now, if it changes the standards, you've got to work it back into the ops manual so that it's codified. But otherwise, the ops manual should point and say, this is the latest version. This is where you get this. Here's your tool. Today, that means a learning management system. It means a file share system. It might mean Restaurant 365. It might be a website. But it points to areas where employees can access it. It's the right information to the right people at the right time in the right format. Again, I don't put recipes or build guides into an ops manual because they change frequently, and you should be allowed to change them frequently, and you should update them frequently. But I'm going to tell you where to find it, how to use it, when to use it, how to get access to it.
Bryan, I'm going to put up a question. What are the things a PM franchise should be cautious when they have just started in search of first partner? I think that's probably a sales question. Nick, do you know what PM is referencing? We'll come back to that. I mean, and for whoever put the comment,
whoever put the comment, it's AAPM. Like, give us more.
So, and Bryan, on the ops manual, let's get into some logistical items. And conversation came up today, 2 points I want to discuss. Especially, we have new issues like on the horizon, Virginia banning non-competes for franchisors starting property management. Thank you. We'll get to that question. So we have on the horizon starting July 1, non-competes banned in franchise agreements, which means franchisee could terminate and go start a competing business. So as franchise counsel, some of the things we're evaluating, discussing with our clients, how do we protect the confidentiality of their information, trade secrets, recipes, processes, right? And so one of the areas franchisors will need to amplify is our control over our intellectual property, our confidentiality. And sure, from a legal perspective, I could talk about how we're doing that in agreements, the legal, but how do you address that from an operations manual information perspective? Like, what are best practices for franchisors? So if we do get in litigation, someone doesn't say, well, you released this info and you did it in a non-confidential way, or you didn't follow these best practices.
Well, that gives further reason to segment your audiences, right? To keep the recipes and the build guides out of the ops manual so that you don't have to give the ops manual to somebody who makes the sandwiches. I actually had a question for you about whether or not this the new law includes NDAs, because it applies to franchisees as non-compete, but can the franchisee still require an NDA of their management team, which will help protect it?
I mean, for the moment, like, probably can, but will courts uphold them? Probably not. At will employee. So assume there's going to be some protection there. I think at the ultimate level, which I like your point, and I think everyone listening, your recipes are not in your ops manual. So my question, because that to me is important. I had a call a couple hours ago. Charles, what happens with these processes? And one of my answers was try to control as much as possible and deliver it through restricted supply chain. But in your example, where do you put the recipes and that super confidential items?
Yeah, so that goes on to an LMS is really the best place for it, a learning management system. Um, having We're in a day and age where we have lots of platforms for lots of things. So Dropbox, you can restrict access. You can control both the authorization and the authentication when somebody comes in. We're not consultants. We're not a technology consultant, but everybody should be issuing email addresses to their franchisees, because then all of the other systems will, number one, you've got single sign-on, so they don't have to remember logins and passwords for it, but also you can cut them off from that immediately. So the moment you don't renew an agreement, or the moment you fire an employee, you can cut them out of one system and then they're cut out of all of the systems. So they only have access to it when they're in there. How do you keep them from scraping it? How do you keep them from writing down everything that they just learned? You don't really, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of people have terminal uniqueness. My turkey club sandwich isn't that much different from somebody else's. The recipe for the sauce may be, but you don't have to give that to the line level employees if it already comes bottled, which, talk about consistency and scalable systems. For the first 15 units, yeah, you're making your sauces in-house. So we give those procedures. As you scale and as you grow, then you're probably having that bottled and shipped. So there are ways bigger people could protect that, and smaller people, unfortunately, right now, there are certain safeguards that are best practices, but they'll keep an honest man out.
Should franchisors have playbooks that showcase what an ops manual is? If you drill this down to what I'm trying to get to is, all of this is great foundational stuff. Mm-hmm. If you're talking to franchisors and say founders, CEOs, maybe not ops, everyone but ops, and you start talking about this, you're like, this does not excite me. But no. What would excite them is the playbook that now puts it into play that actually drives sales. And so, should there be a playbook attached to an ops manual?
Yeah. So we always talk about in terms of having a franchise library. The ops manual has an objective and an audience. The audience is the Z, and the objective is to clearly lay out what systems they have to use, how to use them, how to provision them. A construction playbook is usually something that comes along when somebody knows enough to begin to pave the road behind them. First few units, you don't know what tile you're using and you're still playing with. The first 5 units in any system don't really completely look alike, because you make improvements as you go. So that playbook should be updatable, live within the control of the people doing it. We've got grand opening manuals, local store marketing manuals, different playbooks, different guides that are all part of the system. You're going to talk, I believe I saw an ad about how friction exists in the sales process between what's written down, what's on a website, and what people say. Sometimes they're not all in agreement. That happens when you've got different platforms too. I've got an LMS, an FDD, an ops manual, a grand opening playbook. What happens when a topic that is used by all 4 of those is changed? Do they change in all 4 spots? The answer is usually no. Founders, CEOs, let's talk to founders. What should excite them about an ops manual is the clarity gained. Almost everybody thinks that they know exactly how to write down their operations, their systems. And when you begin asking them questions, how will this hold water if at 10 units, at 25 units, at 50 units? Most of them don't know, because this is how I do it right now today in New Jersey. Will that work in Atlanta? The process of creating a manual is as valuable, more valuable than the actual document at the end. We all know that it's a requirement. You have to have it. If you look at it like that, then a template will work just fine. Some versions of AI will work just fine. If that's all that you look at it for, if you're looking at it to gain clarity, and clarity enables scale, right? If my team doesn't know whether or not a specific IIRC certification is required or recommended, then you're going to have different franchisees who get it and some who don't. That's a product consistency problem. That's a scalability problem. It's an enforcement problem. Lack of clarity at the front end creates it's like your aim is off. It's ready, fire, aim. So anybody who's going out selling franchises without the clarity of not only what we do today, but how that should change for 50 units.
Well, I think that I'm going to connect it with this question came up, but Nick is always talking about unit economics, and it's true. Every conversation we have in the franchise world, franchise systems that succeed have good unit economics. Franchisees who are profitable. Franchise systems that have litigation or issues with confidentiality and non-competes and have issues with poor performing franchisees, poor unit economics. This question, right? What are the things a property management franchise should be cautious when they have just started and in search of their first partners or selling that first franchise? I mean, the reality becomes, and for AA there, you need to find an aligned franchisee that has the right expectations for the opportunity that you offer. You need to ensure that you've set clear expectations. You're not overselling it, and you need to make them successful, right? And then on the operations manual perspective, you also need to make sure that's a person where, as you coach and guide them, they're going to follow the system. And not just a BS system because she said, here's my BS ops manual that some consultant gave me because they copied and pasted BS. But like, I'm going to work with them. They're going to follow it. And then to Nick's point, I'm going to get off my ass and put together playbooks that are going to talk about opening, customer satisfaction, focusing on your bottom line. Then you're going to follow up with them on reporting P&Ls, going over their monthly marketing spend, making them successful, making them validate. And that's how you succeed, I think. But what do you guys think there?
I'm going to say, I think one of the misses that's happening, and this is on the ops manual. I don't hear franchisors saying, I'm going to put my ops manual into ChatGPT or Claude. I'm going to have this really simplify this and tell me what the top 10 things my franchisees need to know. I want that to turn into a worksheet that goes into our franchisor training so the franchisee can be dialed into what we're specifically saying in our ops manual. Nobody's doing that, and that's such an easy task to do. So now this ops manual lives on a shelf that doesn't get used. FDD is never referenced, and it doesn't turn into the way that you operate the business.
Well, look, the idea I think is great. Don't ever put your ops manual in ChatGPT or Claude or anything else because you're disseminating confidential into public.
Don't listen to lawyers. They're going to
No, don't do it. Don't do
No,
it. And to be honest, though, if I'm going to be candid, you don't need stupid AI that's going to kill you anyway to tell you what's important. You know the important things. You just need to do the legwork to build out the systems around it. What do you think, Bryan?
Well, a couple of it. AI can probably create, but it doesn't do a good job of analyzing what should be in. Content strategies about what to put in, what to keep out, and how much to say. Almost every manual I've seen, this is why people don't read manuals, Nick, is they're too detailed. They've never been updated. They don't need it any longer. Who needs an ops manual 3 years into opening? They don't. It's a beginning thing. It's a starting point. And therefore, we should point to all of the things that do change. We've got new videos. We have new forms available on Dropbox. We've got these tools available for scheduling, for inventory control. The ops manual will tell you how to use them, how to provision them, how to troubleshoot them, when to do it, how often to do it, who should do it. That's the model. go here to learn the method of operation, because those things change, and I shouldn't have to, if I put it in the ops manual and show it somewhere else, it exists in two places. Going back to my example earlier, two different places saying two different things because one wasn't updated creates confusion and erodes consistency. So we've got an authoritative place for the right information for the right people at the right time. The ops manual brings clarity. It's a roadmap. It is who does it, when they do it, how often they do it. Here's the general process for doing it. Here are the tools for doing it. Here's how I know it was done properly, and here's my standard. That's what an ops manual is. I've got a 3,000 unit chain that has an 86-page ops manual. Somebody reads it once, and then they go back to it when they want to know what the resource is for where do I find the uniform guide. It's here. But here are the standards for uniform. So a mistake that early franchisors make, and we see it when we redo manuals. I've redone them for 500 unit, 3,000 unit chains. The information for a smaller person, yes, has to be more detailed because it also serves as their training because they only have one document and they've got limited internal resources. As that grows, you should begin to segment, to target, and to specialize. Thus, a library.
Well,
Yeah.
I think about I'm gonna use a refrigerator. All of our parents had this directions that go into like the junk drawer.
Mhm.
All of us probably have the same thing. We never look at it, maybe when we install it, but when we need to go and change out a filter, we need a point of reference. But what has transformed over time, if we go back into the 80s, the 1980s and 90s, we have this directions that sits in a drawer. In 2026, we have YouTube videos that also are available. So we still keep it in the drawer. We might still reference it, but we need to go learn here. And so that's the progression on the ops manual, is that there's other tools around it that need to be built around to actually make it go into play. That's the transformation that brands need to make. But for an emerging brand, they're not going to overinvest in this. But what if they do? Then maybe that's going to impact their unit level economics in a positive way. That's kind of the point. Like, I think it's a throwaway investment, not an investment in the business, and it needs to be changed.
The ops manual, you're saying?
The way that franchisors look at an ops manual as a part of the construct of their business. Yeah. And they have to, like, if you're going to spend, the ops manuals are not cheap. If you're going to spend that much money on a tool, then put the tool to work. Don't put it on the shelf. Don't put it in the junk drawer.
Right. And that's why looking at it as an information broker, as this becomes the single authoritative source for search to tell me where my most updated resource is. What is my standard? When an FBC walks into a unit and says, I don't think this is clean, I think it is clean. What's an objective standard as opposed to a subjective one? Building that out causes you to think about what scale looks like. So that process of today, I have a photo library, but if you want to create a marketing piece, then go off and do it using these standards and send it to us for approval. Eventually, a mature system, a scalable one, has either a library where that stuff has already been created. Very rarely is a franchisee going to, in a mature system, going to have a need that you haven't already created. What does scalable look like? What's the roadmap for getting there? But what never changes is the standard for doing it, or the flexibility around what happens if it's new. What's my exception process? Where do I go for approval? How do I get help on? What is this resource? That's what the ops manual is. And then it becomes a referenceable document over time where all of its additional players are being continually updated for the audience.
And I think that's the game changer, the mindset shift from I went to a consultant, I have this ops manual, it's going to sit in a drawer, to this is the information hub, the information system for our franchise system, and it's going to light up different nodes as we advance and go along, and to do it in a way, prepare it and grow it in a way for scalability and profitability, right? And that's really, that distinction I've always appreciated, Bryan. And for everyone listening, Bryan will be at FranCamp. That's a good segue, but not really. But Bryan will be there. It's coming up in June. And for example, AA and everyone who's joining us today, if you haven't signed up for FranCamp, I would definitely recommend doing it. AA is asking about onboarding your first franchisees. We're going to be focused on AI, redefining your franchise growth strategy, building out your franchise messaging, really in many ways rebooting what's going to be next generation franchise sales. So if you haven't signed up yet, registration is closing out. Last year, I think, Bryan, it was great weather, great location.
Yeah.
I think all around it was a good time. What was your experience there?
It was perfect. I love the location. You guys always put on a really good show. I have met more people there, complimentary audiences, people that I refer clients to, and the conversations are just always great. I'm looking forward to being back in Red Bank.
Yeah. So, and Bryan, we're going to have a good time and appreciate all the support and your clients coming. So guys, June 1 to 3, Red Bank, New Jersey. It is a game changer. And the good thing, we're talking about operations manuals. FranCamp is built around a playbook, around every part of your growth cycle, and it's foundational. So if you haven't been to one, definitely recommend it. Nick, any final words as we end our live stream here?
Oh, this was who knew that operations manual discussion could be this fun? I penciled this in as my nap hour, and I actually had fun talking about it.
I can be. We can make it a lively conversation.
It's good,
it's
guys.
Not just a box to check.
Bryan, thank you, and guys, thanks for joining us today.